Hey, thank you very much. Thank you. I want to offer another text for the Word About Life. It is one that we know pretty, or at least we think we know pretty well, and in fact we may have even used it. Usually we use it to correct other people. And that's okay, I guess. The text comes from Matthew chapter 7. It's part of the Sermon on the Mount. Do not judge so that you may not be judged. For with the judgment you make, you will be judged. And the measure you give will be the measure you get. Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Or how can you say to your neighbor, "Neighbor, let me help you. Let me take the speck out of your eye," while the log is still in your own eye? You hypocrite. Ouch. First, take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. Please note the judgment against others is directly connected with our self-awareness. And there is a corollary. That is, the more self-aware we are, the less likely we are to judge others harshly. And the less self-aware we are, the harsher our judgment is on others. And so today we're talking about keeping within sight and sound my true self. Last Sunday we began our series Within Sight and Sound. It's not as poetic as William Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury, but it will do for what we need to do. And the idea is that to be a beloved community that has a sense of duty and obligation for each other, we need to be intentional about keeping each other within sight and sound. This is what a church really is. Church is not a place we go, but the community we create when we are together. So how do we keep each other within sight and sound? How do we keep a sense of duty and obligation of care for each other fresh? There are a couple of perspectives we need to hold in order to keep each other within sight and sound. One idea is that if I am going to keep you within sight and sound, then I must keep within sight and sound my true self. Knowing my true self? What a joyride of ups and downs and in and outs that is, I tell you. I learned quite a few years ago in a leadership class that we not only lead out of what we know about ourselves, but we also lead out of things and places within ourselves that we don't know. That the class expected me to embrace the truth that as a leader, sometimes I can project light on the people that I'm working with, but I am also just as capable of projecting darkness on the people that I'm working with. And one of the tools they gave us to help us reflect on this and to grow in self-awareness is called Johari's window. And I put a version of it in the bulletin, so take a look at it. Johari's window. This is one window with 4 panes of glass. Pane, P-A-N-E-S. not P-A-I-N-S. Although there is a worthy wordplay possibility with the two words. That is, emotional pain is part of growing the pain of open self, and the larger the blind self, the more painful a person's life is. So take a look at it. Let me share some observations over the years. First of all, do not use Johari's window against others. It is not appropriate to tell others that their blind or hidden pain of their Johari's window is showing. Your blind self is revealing itself. I see it and you don't. I know you better than you know yourself. Is not an act of kindness. It is not good for people who are living in relationship with each other to be able to say, your Johari's window showing. But it is helpful to be able to say, you know what? I think I have just stumbled on a blind spot within myself. And I want to share that with you. And I thank you for helping me see this. Another observation. Now for many people, the scariest part of Johari's window is the blind self-pain. That is, people with a large blind self are people who are constantly scratching their head wondering, what just happened? They walked away from a relationship or they walked away from a conversation and they don't have a clue what happened because their self-perception and perception of others of them are just disconnecting. Does anyone have that experience? Okay. And if you live your life that way, constantly misfiring, you're going to have a lot of pain in your life. And there's a lot of disconnect between self-perception and the way people experience you. That's a problem. I have a resting smirk face. I have this perpetual smirk on my face. That people might be telling me something, they may be revealing something very important to them, and I'm sitting there and I need to be aware that I might be coming across with a smirk on my face. That's not very helpful when you're trying to be a pastor to somebody. And so for a long time, there was this disconnect between what I really felt for people, what I wanted to do with people and for people, and the way that I was being perceived. And then finally someone told me, why do you have a smirk on your face all the time? I'm like, oh, that is helpful. Thank you. A person with a large blind self will be heard saying, I'm such a nice guy. Why do people treat me so badly? This is a hard way to live, and to shrink this pain, it takes a lot of honesty and it takes a lot of courage. Another observation. Maturity and emotional health is characterized by the open self. That is, information about you that both you and others know. And the larger this pain, the better and the healthier the interactions between people. Transparency is a part of this pain. Maturity, health, and transparency are very popular words right now. People like to think they have large pains of open self. We will often say, what you see is what you get. And this is true until something touches something in our hidden self. Then the pinch comes to our open self. Let me give an example. I'm a person who moves through the world with a great big open self. I have all this openness and honesty and integrity. And I go to the grocery store, I pick up groceries for dinner. My big, wide open self is in the checkout line, and there is a rack of Hostess Twinkies. And without much thought, I throw it in with the groceries and I eat it on the way home. I leave the wrapper on the seat of the car. The next day, Peg and I go somewhere and she sees the Twinkie wrapper in the seat. We both see it. And we look at each other. And without any words spoken, the communication between us goes like this. Ken, you're a diabetic. Peg, I know I'm a diabetic. I have a great big open self. Her eyebrows go up. This incident points out that I'm still not accepting my diagnosis, and some of my denial is still in my hidden self. So I say, I have no idea how that Twinkie wrapper got there. And her eyebrows go up again. So that's a way in which some of the dynamics exist, that we move through these various panes of our Johari window. And the point is that the more that is hidden that is revealed, more that is hidden goes into the open pane, that the more that is blind goes into the open pane, then the better I am able to move through the world in such a way that I can indeed be kind and compassionate and keep you within sight and sound. And also the way in which you are able to receive that which I offer, what we offer to each other. So yes, keeping each other within sight and sound depends upon us keeping within sight and sound our true selves. So take a deep breath. And are there any observations? I know we don't do this very often, but every once in a while we invite you to share your observations. Are there any observations that you would have about this window? Who is ready to go to a family reunion and use this? Okay. Just raise your hand and I'll come to you. Johari window. Johari. Johari. And it's named after two psychologists. Their first names were Joe and Harry. Johari.
Thank you.
Okay? Okay, who else had their hand? Yes. Yes, yes.
I'm Jackie.
Here's a microphone. Oh, no, you're not loud enough to pick up on our sound system. Please, thank you.
And I just had a reunion with my family in Minnesota, and I had to come back early.
Oh, please put the microphone closer to your, because I think that's important to share. Thank you. Say it again.
Because I'm so on top of things. And I was going there like I was Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, you went to a family reunion and had to come back early, is what you said.
I had to leave early. And you know how nice people are in Minnesota.
Yeah, they're pretty good. I just came from there 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was,
it was chaotic.
Yeah.
Okay. But they were nice about it.
But they were nice about it. All right, thank you. At least they were nice about it. Okay. Any other observations about Johari window? Well, take a look at, John. Thank you, Joe.
Get my exercise.
Yeah. The reason why the microphones are important is because it picks up on our video that then goes on to YouTube. So be careful what you say because it's going out to the whole world. Okay.
One observation.
Mike,
Yeah.
I got it.
One observation on your open area.
Yes.
When that becomes smaller, your blind side becomes a lot bigger,
Yes.
and your hidden agenda
becomes
becomes a lot bigger for your relationships with other people.
Yes, that's right.
And when that open area becomes bigger, both of those improve. And also that one corner you haven't talked about yet,
Yes.
that becomes a bigger
liability to you and everyone around you.
Yeah.
And that's a risk for all of us.
That's right. One of the things I like about some of the graphics that you can actually set up a table with these 4 blocks, and you can put your cursor on a computer in the center, and you can actually slide it around so it will make the panes bigger, and as you make one bigger, the others get smaller.
Those
And that's the
dividing
point.
lines change. They shift in, they shift out.
That's right.
To the extent we have more open communications, we have less risk, less liability in life.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, John. Yes, Michael.
well,
I think the green microphone's struggling.
In thinking, I'm familiar with the Johari window myself, and I was reflecting upon when you and I met a while back when you challenged me to think about why I was telling my story about being diagnosed with mental health challenges, and why am I telling my story? Am I telling it because I want the attention, or am I telling it because there's a purpose and a hope for why I'm telling the story? And so in thinking about it, it's like I've just seen a lot of growth in myself since that time, and now that I've have gone through the peer support training and everything else, the story isn't about me, it's about the inspiration behind the story. And I was in denial about why I was telling my story to begin with at times, and how now there's a whole other dynamic into why I'm telling my story and the way that I tell it.
I think as a community, all of us would affirm, Michael, that your open self has grown tremendously. And we're grateful to you and for your honesty and your courage. Good job. Okay. All right. Marilyn.
Many people in my circle are dying. A number of people that I'm very close to have cancer, and they're dying. And it seems to me, as I've been with them in the last couple months, that they're becoming more open as they're realizing what is happening. And good things, sometimes painful things, but good things are the outcome of that.
Yes, amen. Thank you. Thank you. June.
I've got myself in trouble on Facebook because people say I'm private. I want to keep myself private, and I don't want to say things about myself that people can misinterpret it. And I say I'm an open book. You ask me anything, I'll tell you. And I think it's a good way to be. And if I ask you how you are, I want to know if you're sick, if you have a death in your family, or anything that's happening that you want to share. And I think it's better to get it out than to keep it within. And I have found during my illness this past month that I have a lot of people that in the church that care about me, people that send me cards, people that call me, some people who come over and help me. And I think that's because I'm so open.
Yes.
So, because I could have kept it to myself that I was sick. And I think that's a problem with the office. People don't call the office and tell them what's happening to them and what's going on with them. And then they blame the church because the church never did anything. and if you don't know, you can't help.
And I think, June, I would want to affirm that when you ask someone how they're doing, you really mean it. You really want to
Yeah.
know.
I wanna
And
know.
appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you. I would also, yeah. I would also, especially in terms of social media, I guess I would want us to make some distinctions between an open self, a private self, and a public self. That those are not all the same thing. Those are three very different kinds of things. So that why Jesus said, you know, be aware of yourself. Jesus also said, don't cast your pearls to the swine, too. And social media has that double cutting edge kind of possibility. All right. So I want to conclude that all of us have all four pains, and the pains grow and shrink. And the idea is to grow in self-awareness and therefore expanding the open self. Staying committed to this process is doing our best to keep our true self within sight and sound, which in turn empowers us to grow in our capacity to keep each other within sight and sound. As human beings, we have what we present to the world. We have what we see in the mirror. We have what is shown to us in our dreams. We have what is revealed in our greatest trials. But we also have an abyss within us where shadows, our inner child, monsters and leviathans, and unknown potential dwell. Remember the story of Jonah. God called Jonah to preach the possibility of salvation to a bunch of dirty foreigners. He didn't want to do it. The story of Jonah and the whale is less about a man being swallowed by a big fish and much more about a human being going deep into his own abyss in order to find the strength and to be as inclusive as his God. Have you not heard this? There will be judgment day for preachers and teachers who have not taught this. As helpful as Johari's window is for us as individuals, it can also help us gain insights into groups and into organizations. Our families have an open self, a hidden self, a blind self, and an unknown self. We often resist truth tellers within our families, and we may come home from our family reunions early. Sorry. Our country has an open self, hidden self, blind self, and unknown self. We often resist truth tellers in our nation. National mourning caused by events like 9/11, school shootings, the funerals of people with integrity that have shaped our soul and sung to our soul, funerals of politicians, are windows of opportunity for us to look at our national Johari's window. These are big explorations all by themselves. Shadow Rock. We have an open self, a hidden self, a blind self, and an unknown self. We stand at a crossroads. For us is the path of grief about our glorious past. The other road is anxiety about an uncertain future. However, the same intersection that has these paths, it is also a place where we stand with gratitude for all the blessings of the past and excitement for the adventure of the unknown future. It is not either or, it is both and all. Which self stands at this intersection? To help us discern our collective soul, our best true self, and our future path, the board is committing itself to a process of trust building and truth telling. And so next week, Rhonda Bannard from an organization called From Inspired Connections will join us. Rhonda is the facilitator that our governing board has recruited to help us explore our different selves and to help us discern our best self for the future. We'll be introducing her, and you'll get a chance to speak to her next week. So, we continue. We continue to look, to figure out how it is that we create community by keeping each other and our true selves within sight and sound. Amen.